You have any questions for me? I can't wave a wand on what they're going to do.
That's what I heard. So it wasn't going to be terrible if not, but. Yeah, that's nice. I bet it was. Yes. That's nice.
I know, mine was. I think they
Nice. Uh-huh. That's right. I know. You know they're good then. Are you ready? Go ahead and call the USD 49 Board of Education meeting for Monday, March 26th to order. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Been moved by Board Member Adams and seconded by Board Member Schwartz. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next item on the agenda is audience participation. Not everybody at once. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is the Best of the Best Awards. The Best of the West, Best of the Best, Best of the West, we can change it. Best of the Best is designed to recognize those students or staff who go above and beyond in their day-to-day activities. They truly are exemplary in every way. The winners will receive a limestone plaque as well as a gift certificate to local businesses, and the winners have been nominated by their peers. Our Student Best of the Best Award winner this month is Catalin Unrein, and I believe Catalin was nominated by Julie Mohi, and I think Julie is here to possibly say a few words. Perfect.
So Catalin is not only a bright student, but she is also a very, very hard worker. She takes learning seriously and she puts in the extra effort to get the job done and done well. She displays many qualities of a leader. She listens to others, demonstrates by example, is open to suggestions, and focuses on the task that needs to be done while thinking outside the box to surpass the end goal. She is someone that could be partnered with any other student to make them feel special and included. Catalin's hard work, determination, and personality are essential to our classroom, and we are so lucky to have her as a Lincoln Leopard leader. So congratulations, she's an awesome, awesome student.
Okay, and our staff Best of the Best Award winner this month is Julie Zollinger. I believe Julie was nominated by Mr. Pallister, and I think he is here as well. Say a few words.
It is my privilege to nominate Julie Zollinger. She is a school psychologist at Hayes Middle School, and I saw her across the street for years as a school psychologist at Wilson Elementary School. I'm not sure where her journeys have taken her, but I know she's been an integral part of both buildings. And to just talk about Hayes Middle School and why Julie is the best of the best. A school psychologist, it's one of those jobs you go, what does a school psychologist do? so many things. She is the bridge between special education and regular education, between administration and teachers, between families and our teachers. There are so many things that she does to make that things right for kids. Right now, she does a ton of paperwork. As school psychologist, I think that's one of the main things is, you know, you have all that testing and all that paperwork that you have. But the integral part is working with kids and teachers and making that bridge so the families are secure that their kids, whether they're on an IEP, in a special ed classroom or a regular ed classroom, are getting what they need to be successful. And Julie works with our teachers as well as our students. She is one of the administrative team with our counselors and principals and school psychologists. When we have meetings, she is one of our leaders in the building. And going much farther on from being a school psychologist is the other roles that she takes in our building and district-wide. One of the things she is doing right now, and she has worked with our crisis safety committee at Hayes Middle School, clear back to when we rewrote it the last time. Now she is district-wide working on the prepare and the safety crisis being prepared as USD 489. She went to the training and now is coming back to bring all that back to our district. So Julie works with the individual students, the parents, the teachers, the administrators, and now the entire district to make it safe. And I just want to tell her, her family, her husband and son are here in the crowd, and just like any position here in our district, it takes your whole family to be able to do your job. So I want to thank all of them. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Pallister, for nominating me and to the selection committee for this honorable award. I've experienced great satisfaction facilitating change in our school district, whether it be at the individual, family, department, building, or district level from behind the scenes. Demonstrating integrity, enlightening, and empowering others to be the best they can be have always been my professional goals. My 19 years as a school psychologist in Hayes have been exceptionally fulfilling. I've had administrators who have supported my efforts in implementing evidence-based practices in my schools to promote safe, healthy development and academic achievement for students. We have a great team of school psychologists who provide high-quality services to support our students academically, behaviorally, and emotionally through prevention and intervention activities. The school psychologists are also an asset to our district and special education cooperative by providing therapeutic services and resources to families and school staff. Through this work, the psychologists have enhanced the skills and empowered others to strive to be their best at home and at school. I've had the privilege of working alongside phenomenal special education teachers who wholeheartedly commit themselves to meeting the needs of their students. Many of them go above and beyond in their efforts to understand and help their students, even when what they may discover are traumatic life experiences. My involvement in the district and schools crisis teams and efforts to promote a safe school climate has been a focus in my professional practice. I look forward to my continued work in this area with the superintendents, building administration, and building teams through the evidence-based comprehensive model for school crisis prevention and response, the PREPARE model. Lastly, I want to express my gratitude to my family, Brett and Alan, for supporting and cheering me on as I have strived to be the best school psychologist I can be. Thank you.
Thanks again to our sponsors, Kiel Operations and Gala's this month, and once again, congratulations to Catalin and Julie. Okay, our next item on the agenda is communications from other organizations. Looks like we have the early childhood connections information.
That would be Dawn.
That's just my 2 regular reports up there next. I do have a couple items on the consent agenda, sorry about that. The first one is the federal grant. This is our federal Early Head Start grant. Currently, it's flat funded. We haven't made any changes in it, so it's just the 4th year of our 5-year grant cycle. And the second item I have on the consent agenda is our program improvement plan. We do go through a self-assessment process, which involves parents, community members, other staff members, and from that information, we do set up a program improvement plan for the year. And so that is also on the consent agenda for your approval. Okay.
Very good. Anybody have any questions on that? So then we'll move on to the next item, which is the report of the superintendent. John?
I have just a couple spotlights, school spotlights that I'll go over. One of them ends up being the Hayes High boys basketball team. They ended up winning the WAC championship and league honors. They had league honors. The girls basketball athletes also had league honors as well that I'd like to read through. Congratulations to the Hayes High School basketball team for going undefeated in the Western Athletic Conference League tournament. The Indians knocked off Dodge City with a 92-80 win. The WAC first team for the boys included seniors Ethan Nunnery and Cole Murphy. The WAC Player of the Year was senior Ethan Nunnery. Coach Rick Keltner was honored as the WAC Coach of the Year. Second team honors were also awarded to junior Tragan McCrae. Hayes High junior Savannah Schneider was honored as the WAC girls first team, and junior Callie Leiker and sophomore Brooke Denning were honored on the WAC girls second team. Congratulations to all these incredible athletes and to Coach Keltner for receiving these honors. Also, another item that most people are probably aware of in Hayes is our Special Olympics. Kansas was hosted at Hayes High. Hayes High School hosted a portion of the Special Olympics Kansas basketball tournament in March. Hayes High School's Special Olympic basketball team played with great heart and perseverance throughout the tournament. Hayes High School is the only high school in the state of Kansas that sponsors a school team. USD 489 is very proud of all of its students, athletes, and their coaches for representing Hayes High so well. I think that was the only 2 that we have. But for the report that I end up having, I have a few items I wish to share. One is just an update to the calendar. We were waiting for one item and for you to be aware that those early release dates, all of them are going to be the second Wednesdays of the month, except the one exception is in March. Because of spring break, it'll be the third Wednesday. So again, next year's calendar, we have second Wednesdays of the month, except for March is going to be the early releases. I want to share also that the day after, I think, it was March 13th, so it was the day after our last board meeting. We ended up having, it was organized by actually emergency response within this area. It was put together, it was a tabletop exercise that was done, and it was really pretty amazing. There's a few people in the room that was there as I look around that actually witnessed this, but we had Highway Patrol, we had Sheriff Department, we had Fort Hays State University Police, we had Hayes Police, had the fire departments, county and city. I think there had to be probably 40 people there. Marty and Tom was there, I was there. It was really it was probably about an hour, 45 minutes. And in that time they set their scenario that they set. It was well done because the scenario was really off from what I had in mind going there, because I thought it'd be during the school day. And they started out that it was 7:06 in the evening on a Thursday during a basketball game at Hayes High. And it really kind of changed my whole thinking as soon as they said that. Because right then, it's not a matter of students and planned drills that you have. It's a matter then that you have probably the majority in the gym are going to be adults. And you don't have really drills that set there. And it was just, it was very interesting as they went through the whole process of what would be happening and who should be doing what. And it was very well received, it appeared, and it seemed as if they were going to probably get another one scheduled in the near future as well. So again, just, and another piece for people to understand, this was in process of being planned before we had the tragedy in Florida. You know, even before that week, it was in the process, they were talking about having it planned. So I would say it's nice to know that trying to do what's necessary with those emergency personnel, of knowing how they work together, because there's many different cases they do have to work together to some degree. But in a tragic situation like that, it's a matter where everybody needs to be knowing what one another's doing and trying to work as efficiently as they can in that crisis situation. So I think that's probably enough, unless there was any questions. It was just, like I said, pretty enlightening to be able to sit there and listen to it. You have any words, Marty? You were one present. It was a little disturbing too as you're visualizing it as they talk. So.
Could you elaborate more what the tabletop activity is?
Well, the tabletop activity is just where they gave the scenario. I mean, they even got to more detail than just saying that something happened at 7:06. They identify someone comes into the parking lot. They have a gun. They identify the shooting begins. They go into the building and they're shooting that it happened. I mean, they go into the detail of identifying timetable and what's happening at that point. And then they're saying, okay, what is going to, where's the sheriff, how long will it be before you get people there? I mean, as soon as that word gets out. And they're identifying, estimating times of who's going to be there. Then they're saying, okay, how many people would that be on a Thursday at 7 o'clock? And it was interesting because they were going, well, at that time there'd probably be only this many. Whereas earlier in the day, it would have been this many. You know, they were identifying the number of people. Then they said, okay, where's the fire department going to set up? Where's the ambulance? Where are they going to actually be set up at? Then they talked about the entrance exits of the parking lot for the high school, and they were identifying, okay, are we stopping people who are, you know, as they run out of the gymnasium and get in their cars and try to speed out of there? Are you worried at all of people leaving at that particular time? And they were saying probably not, because they didn't think they'd even be able to do that. You know, as they're coming in, the numbers, as they come in and people are going out, but they could probably turn around and start controlling those that are coming into. You know, in the emergency of perhaps parents or other families that want to come into that area, they may have to start the blocking things off as to letting, you know, who can come in. No, I know I'm rambling. I know that's, but the rambling part is a lot of what was talked about, and they talked about it from the standpoint of Highway Patrol's thoughts on things. I was a little surprised the number of highway patrolmen that would be present in the time that they were saying too. The numbers of something like that would be present, you know, you're talking about, I mean, the timeliness was good, it seemed, from the standpoint of saying they would have this many people there within 10 to 20 minutes. But the way the scenario went, the scenario was over within 10 minutes. You know, they even had in their scenario that the person who came in ended up shooting themselves too. So it was over, but again, you end up having the chaos that's going on at that particular time. So I just thought the discussion, it wasn't the scenario itself, it was all that discussion around communication of saying, okay, radio frequency, how are we going to be talking to one another? They talked quite a bit about that one, about making sure that they're on the right frequency, that everybody can actually communicate with one another, and seemed to be a very beneficial exercise. Another item that happened just today, and that was nice that Luke and Lance were able to attend as well. We had, the Chamber was putting on their second cruise for the Chamber, for the businesses. There was 3 of us there then that was able to participate. Well, actually, 4, Christina was present too. And being able to go around. They did a really nice job, I thought, from the standpoint of looking at it from the pieces of downtown, okay, from the standpoint of visitor bureau, from Tammy's position, which is the Chamber as a whole, and then also economic development, which is Aaron. So you had 4 different pieces that was being shared, and the tour really tried to tie in all 4 of those, how they are separate and yet how they tie together as well. Very enlightening, the number of things that are possibly in the works for Hayes. I mean, if even a third of what they were talking about that's in the works would happen in the next year or two, it really is, things are happening. It really sounds exciting. So different pieces of land have opened up recently and people have interest in it. They, of course, it's not a secret at all about the hotels, you know, that are in I didn't realize that one hotel just opened just this last weekend. So that was something. Talking about the possibility of the railroad, I forget what they call that, where the railroad comes in. It's over by Glassman, where they'd be able to unload and load more easily, and
Basically just adding railway into the...
And that being a possibility that they're really working on it. Just had a lot of different pieces that sounds really exciting for Hayes. And they talked about how that links to housing in the community too, you know, as far as overall how this all networks together and how they want to end up making it a place for economic growth for the Hayes area. I don't know if you'd add anything, Luke or Lance.
No, I think that pretty well sums it up. Like I said, just a good idea as far as going around town, status updates on how things were coming for new businesses, and like you said, they did a good job of tying the different entities, the downtown Hayes, you know, the Chamber, the Economic Coalition, the 4 different groups there, tying them all together. So.
Well, you know, that key word we came up was collaboration. You know, I mean, we all look at it as it's our separate entity, and this is the part we control. But I think Mandy has talked about this before too. I mean, you know, we have to have good schools so we can get people to come in, and it's just we all rely on each other. You know, and I think even when some of the questions and stuff came up today, I mean, all of us would look at it as how that applied to us. But I mean, it needs all of us.
That's all I have.
Any questions for John on his report? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is the financial report. Tracy?
I don't have anything material to note in the budget this month. Just a couple things I did want to point out. You may see on the Head Start and special education lines, some of our smaller locations, you know, we're singling out just a few line items. Those are over budget, but they will be absorbed within the whole budget. So just when you see those, note that they are still within their budget, just those specific lines have gone over and will have to be, money will be used from other places. For the month of February, we were 12.2% under budget. And we have very exciting news about our workers' compensation program that Christy from Assurance Partners is here, and I will let her explain that. I just wanted to put a plug in there. We have very exciting news that I've been very thrilled about. Were there any questions on the budget report? And that's all I have.
Very good. Any other questions for Tracy? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is the consent agenda to include the approval of the board meeting minutes for March 12, 2018, approval of bills in the amount of $442,084.92, personnel transactions, financial report to include the clerk's report, investment report, and petty cash report, the Early Childhood Connections Self-Assessment and Program Improvement Plan, and the Early Childhood Connections 2018-19 Federal Early Head Start Grant.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, been moved by Board Member Adams,
Second.
seconded by Board Member O'Borney. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next item on the agenda, moving on to new business, is the Assurance Partners renewal. And I think we have some reps here.
Right. Good evening. I'm Christy Balthazar with Assurance Partners, and I'm going to give you a brief overview. We kind of took a look. We went back about 5 years and kind of gave you a 5-year perspective, as well as really kind of zeroing in on exactly where you're at now. So our firm represents 8 districts across the state, and I think this overview will give you an understanding of the approach that we take, not only to the insurance aspect of it, the risk transfer piece, but also risk management. So Tracy, if you'll go ahead. So our strategy is to strive for a zero-loss culture within the district, to identify the issues that are eroding your budget, where is cost leakage or financial leakage taking place in the budget, and then to deploy resources in that direction in order to resolve those issues and recapture that leakage and measure those results. So we really break our analytic brokerage services down into 2 categories, as I indicated. The risk transfer piece in identifying risk and programming insurance coverage and administrating that program, as well as risk management strategies in the identification of risk and then the mitigation of claims when they occur. So here's your cost trend analysis, and I think this is the first part of the success story here at Hayes. If you look at what your costs have done in a 5-year trend, you can clearly see not only did the package reduce significantly in 2015 when you appointed us. Now you'll see that on the package that it's kind of hedging its way back up. That's really due to a couple of factors. One is national flood rates are increasing, so a portion of that has been your flood insurance that's gone up, which is outside of anyone in this room's control. And the other piece, though, is the value increase that we made based on the replacement cost estimators that we did on your properties, your buildings. We made almost $6 million worth of value increase to your program in 2016. So that also makes up part of that increase as well. And then I also want to bring your attention to the workers' compensation. As Tracy indicated, you're doing a much improved job of preventing claims and then managing those claims to closure and lower expenses. So you can see what your workers' compensation premium has done as well. It's reduced from almost $300,000 in 2013 down to $132,000 in 2017. So a 33% decrease since 2014. So that's pretty significant decreases, and hopefully you're obviously seeing that in your budget then, your budget expenditures. So any questions so far on that? Okay. This next slide introduces the Kansas Education Risk Management Pool that you also joined in 2015. Tracy sits on the board of that pool. And it really gives, she has the opportunity to give great insight to the administration of that pool. That means you get to have influence over the members, making sure that people that are applying to join the pool are prepared to join the pool, that they have good risk management practices in place. Also have input on coverage structure. What are the risks that all districts face, and how do we secure coverage in the program for that? as well as claims management and administration. So if I can real quickly, the yellow color there is your deductible line. So your deductibles were also decreased when you joined the pool. They run at about $1,000 on a property deductible, if that gives you a little bit of perspective. So the yellow line is your deductible expense. It's the green area that you actually share risk with other districts in Kansas. So that's the portion of the pool that is shared. And not only do you share the risk that you see structured on, I'm going to call it the left-hand side, but you also then have an aggregate loss fund. So that green box that the arrow is pointing at, that's your aggregate loss fund, or loss fund that's also available. You have additional layers, primary layers of insurance then, that the pool has purchased to go over their risk sharing. And then you also have excess layers of property and liability that also would prevent a situation that really it's intended to prevent the potential of having a statewide catastrophic loss that would have the potential to blow through those limits. In addition, they purchase excess aggregate protection above and beyond the loss fund. So the security that that provides is if the actuaries that have determined what the appropriate premium and loss funding in the pool, if, let's just say for a chance that actuaries could be wrong. I mean, I know they wouldn't say it, but let's just say that that could exist. That extra $2 million of excess coverage gives you a little bit of cushion that if, like I said, something happens that we haven't properly funded the losses, you have excess layers of protection there. So the risk is really minimal. The financial risk, if you will, that the pool is not well funded. You know, I want to congratulate the board because in 2015, when you made the decision to join the pool, you were some of the first school districts in Kansas. There were a lot of districts that considered it, but quite honestly didn't have the courage to do it and wanted to sit back and see how it went and things. And I can tell you, based on the next slide, Tracy, that here's the growth in the program statistics. So what started with 10 districts and just over 16,000 students, as of December of 2017 had grown to 21 districts, so it had doubled in size, 54,000 students, and you can see how much those total insured values have grown. Now, I can also tell you they're looking for it to probably grow again by a third, effective the 7/1 renewal date. There are a bunch of schools, and I think Topeka just joined and things. So it definitely is gaining, the pool is gaining traction, which is a good thing. That means there's more risk sharing going on. It's becoming more heavily funded. And because you were an early participant in the pool, the board right now, and again, Tracy gets to participate and have influence in these discussions, the board is determining what dividends they should share back with you because the performance was really good. So the next slide illustrates what the loss experience of the pool has been by policy year. So essentially, if you break down all the aspects of losses as far as what's been collected, what's been paid, what's still sitting in reserves, and then your total incurred loss, there has not been any surplus returned yet. There are only 11 open claims, or there were as of 12/31 of 2017, and there's just over $900,000 worth of funds available for distribution. I can tell you that the board will not decide to distribute all of that. Really what they're trying to decide right now is how much of that should we give back to the participants, because they do want to start giving it back now so that the late entry districts aren't really benefiting from your early participation in the pool. They want to get those funds back to those members who joined and helped create the pool and help fund it in the first place. So any questions about the pool program that I can answer today? Okay. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about your workers' compensation. And as Tracy said, and you can see from the reduction in premiums that we illustrated earlier, your experience modification is going down. And here's the 5-year trend. So in 2014, your experience modification was a 1.24. It has trended down to a 0.95. So you're below 1, so that means you're receiving a little bit of credit in your premiums for that. You also made a change from the KASB Workers' Compensation Fund that I think you had traditionally participated in into the United Heartland Group as your workers' compensation insurance carrier. And I would just tell you, our experience in working with the fund is that I know that the claim activity that has, some of it that has led to this reduction in claims, those claims some of them had already occurred before we ever got involved. But our experience with other districts really shows that United Heartland is just much more aggressive in risk management and in claims management than the pool had been traditionally. So I think they really deserve some of the credit for helping drive your experience mod down and things. And we continue to monitor your loss experience on twice a year. We meet with Tracy and staff to update you on the loss analysis in regards to your workers' compensation and other lines, and really make sure that we're on top of those claims and get them managed to closure. So congratulations on all the hard work, and really Tracy and your staff deserve a lot of credit for that as well. The other thing that has helped impact the reduction of your workers' compensation mod is that we also implemented a $2,500 deductible. Now, this deductible analysis that we utilize shows what your mod would be had you had the deductible in place for the full experience modification period. We haven't. We've just had that $2,500 deductible in place for 2 of the 3 years that are being promulgated. So that's why there's a difference between the 0.96 and where you might otherwise be once your deductible matures and it's been in place long enough. So what that deductible does is it really helps protect your mod. It helps keep it down and protect your insurability. Makes you more viable in the marketplace as we secure options for you for your upcoming renewal project. So it helps keep you, helps make insurance companies more competitive and desirous of your risk. So, any questions?
I have some questions on the deductible. I'm not sure I track the numbers there. And my overall question is, what benefit if we change the deductible? Or is there any?
Actually, so when...
Say 5,000.
Yeah, so if you look at the $5,000 column, here's what I look at, Mr. Schwartz, is when you look at what that does to your deductible expense. Based on where we were at budget-wise when we selected the $2,500, it's a matter of how much risk based on your historical losses are you willing to have in that deductible expense. So you can see that your what you would have at risk is that your deductible expense, if history repeats itself, would be about $32,000, where the net impact on your deductible would be about $14,000. Again, approximately, and that's, again, this is based on just base rates. So if you go over the $10,000 column, you can see that that deductible expense jumps to $45,000. You have about a $22,000 net deductible impact, and you can see that, yes, it would take your deductible down. And that's one of those things that we look at it, we analyze it annually. And at this point, we don't have a recommendation that you change your deductible, but it's certainly an option.
I guess one of the questions I have is, when we looked at this previously, and I don't know, I assume somebody's gone through and looked at all the claims.
Sure.
But at least when we got into this years ago and started this whole process because we had the threat of cancellation, was what our average claims were $1,500 or give or take. There were very few that were over that, and that's why we started down the road of the $2,500 deductible. I'm just curious what our claims are averaging now, because if they were still at $1,500, it would seem that, or below that, it would seem that if you went with a higher deductible, you'd still save the money. I mean, you're going to get a few cases here and there that you're going to have to pay out.
Yeah, so in order to calculate, complete this analysis, we do take the claims and break them out by, I think $5,000 is the highest we go. We break them out by 5,000, 2,500, 1,000, and 500. I don't have that information with me tonight, but I can tell you that we do look at that information and trend that as well.
How long of a trend do you look at?
We actually look at the exact same period that is included in your experience mod promulgation. So it's really 4 years, the current year accepted, and then it's the 3 years prior to that. So we try and do that for consistency.
And normally that would be good, except for here, when you go to those out years on that 4 years, was when we weren't doing a whole lot on trying to keep, I mean, I think we're averaging 130-some slip and fall cases a year over a period of 3 years at least preceding that, and I'm guessing that number is greatly reduced now.
It is. Actually, your slip and fall for the period of 2016 through 2018 is 12.
Done a lot better. I guess the question I've got, though, is instead, if we look at 4 years, it's going to skew the numbers the wrong way potentially for us. And if we had we've been doing the right thing for the entire 4 years, and maybe we're getting close to that, then that would be a better window, I think, to look at. But would it be better to look at a smaller window for us?
Well, from our perspective, we're looking for sustainability, and I'm not sure that we have gotten the risk management techniques implemented with the safety committee and things, that they've really had a chance to mature yet. So we're really looking for sustainability of that mod and that claim level, activity level. So I know it's trending in the right direction. Now we're looking to see can we create parameters that say, okay, here's where we're going to strive to be. If we get outside of this zone, whether that be on claims activity or the experience mod, then we're going to look at making changes that would help either increase the deductible, change the delivery of risk management services, things of that nature. So we can change the time period, but for us, we're kind of looking to see how, can we sustain this? It really begs the question, have we been lucky or are we getting better at preventing claims and then managing those claims to closure more effectively?
Is it possible to get like a 2-year and 3-year average on those numbers as well as a 4?
Mm-hmm. Do you want me to get that information to Tracy?
Yeah, if you could.
So just to make sure I understand, you want a 2-year average?
Like you said with the breakdown of 5,000 to
Okay.
500. I don't know that we need to go to 500, but
Okay, sure. Okay.
That's got to make a difference on premium.
that's the 40,000.
Yeah.
It's only about 9,000.
And just to make sure I understand so that I know what you're expecting when you say that's got to make a difference on premium,
I see it up here, yeah.
Okay. I was going to say the underwriters won't look at it that way. We can,
They're gonna look
okay.
at 4 years,
Yeah.
Right.
But
Okay.
I think what he's saying, what
I'm
I was
saying-
saying is if you go to
If you
5,000,
choose a
25 to 5,
deductible.
yes.
Okay,
your deductible would be a 30,697 savings if we were at 5,000, is that right?
potentially,
Estimated.
yes. So, okay. I'll get that information to Tracy and we'll explore that. Go ahead.
And just one more question. Your experience mod, can you explain how you came up with those numbers? Are those saying if we would have done that for the full 4 years previous, that's where we would be?
Correct. So we took your history and said, okay, if history repeats itself, here's what it would look like. Had the deductible, any of these deductible levels, been in place for the full promulgation of the mod. Okay. Then I also want to mention from a risk management standpoint, here's just a snapshot of some of the projects that we've completed and worked on and collaborated with your staff and administrative staff with, from participation in your, and structuring of your safety meetings to site walkthroughs. Slips, trips, and falls has been a significant piece of where risk management services have been directed. We also provide online annual automated training to all of your staff. The claims advocacy and loss analysis. We've trained in accident investigation or incident investigation, and as well as participation in carrier loss control visits, and then also helped in the providing options for alternative medical providers that are a good match with United Heartland's approach to managing workers' compensation claims. So, and then we've also identified, we met with Tracy and Faith today, and identified the future risk management projects that we would like to address as we go forward. A lot of it's very similar. You'll also see that we want to really button up your return to work program as well, so that in the event that you have an injured employee, that we can get them back to work and being productive, even if it's in a modified role, so that they're not sitting at home just drawing unemployment or workers' compensation benefits. So this gives you an overview, and we made some adjustments to it today. We're actually going to accelerate the loss analysis that we have scheduled for May of 2018. We're going to move that into April so that the safety committee can meet and address that information and work with that information before the close of the school year, and have a risk management strategy ready to implement when the school year fires back up. We'll address your renewal project. Tracy and I will be at the current board meeting on Wednesday. That's just the board meeting. The following meeting in May, you should have your renewal premium. So Tracy will have that ready to deliver to you for your renewal project. And then we'll do another loss analysis in November, and then meet with Tracy and your staff in January to do a stewardship meeting where, again, we'll look at how are we trending and what modifications, if any, do we need to make to our risk management services. So that brings us to our consultation agreement, which is due to renew this year. We are asking that you consider to renew our agreement without any changes to our fee. And Tracy will have that on a more formal basis for your consideration at the next meeting. But our consultation agreement includes our advice and advocacy in the current program. We address the marketplace for you, advocate and manage your workers' compensation program, and then provide the risk management services for both. When it comes to risk management, we really don't look at it by necessarily line of business, but your disaster recovery or your emergency preparedness drill that John was referring to, like, that's a great example. There is a lot of emerging risk. There are a lot of different techniques that school districts are using for safety and security purposes. It's a lot to sort through. And so we get a lot of information from some very reliable sources in our industry, and we can help share that information with you so that you can make good decisions about what's best for your district. Emergency preparedness is one, and crisis management is one example, but cyber exposure is a significant emerging risk for all districts as well, and that's another area where we'll be able to offer advice and advocacy. So, any questions?
I am curious. It looked as if there's 21 participants in Kermit right now, right?
Yes.
Or
Well, they were at the end of the year.
20, it could be a little more than that. Can you identify how many your company works with of those 21?
I believe we have 6 members
6?
in the program.
Very good. Thank you.
And have proposals to have 2 additional join in July.
Okay.
So, other questions?
I don't have any questions, I just have a comment. I'd like to thank Tracy. She's been around since this started in 13, I think is when this first got underway, when we got the first notice that we were at risk of being put in the high-risk pool and had been canceled. I'd like to thank Marty Patterson. I know he's not on the board anymore, but he was instrumental in starting everybody along the pathway, and it was his initial idea to look at the $2,500 deductible, and John and also Assurance Partners. My rough calculations is over that time period, the district saved $480,000 on work comp insurance and about $46,000 on the other, so $500,000 of savings, and from your work and those others, that money that gets to be spent on things that actually have a more or a greater impact on students than just insuring yourself.
I agree. Yeah, Tracy and her staff are great to work with, too, so.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the Roosevelt Lighting Bid.
I know that had Rusty send more information to you, because again, he was going to be gone this evening as well. I think that several of you had reached out and asked a few more questions on that, but again, just to reference that of the 4 bids, 2 of them were thrown out because the specs on it was just not followed at all. The other 2, one was significantly lower. It did end up making Rusty a bit leery as to why one would be that much lower, but he did make calls to both companies. He was able to talk to them, and he identified they are clearly the same lights. It is the same materials. It's just a matter of we're falling into a good deal of price that was offered that probably should not have, and we're not going to get that deal again, is what's going to happen.
I would entertain a motion so we can open it up for discussion.
I'll move that, motion to approve the low bid from American Electric Company in the amount of $42,541.92 for the Roosevelt Lighting project.
Okay, been moved by Board Member Adams. Seconded by Board Member Fox. We'll open it up for discussion.
I want to point out that of the different things that Rusty had identified when he started a couple years ago, the work that's being done in changing the lighting is the fastest turnaround of saving costs. It is a way in which you can see the well, I say savings, but just the amount of less utility money that has to be spent of electricity in really just a few years. We're probably benefiting of getting that money, all that money back that we're putting in just to switch out the lighting.
I just have a couple of questions. One, it looks like his, if I'm looking at this right, the LED Direct from LLC, that number, $10,000, is not accurate as far as unless my math is way off.
That's right. They had printed that wrong. It would have been higher. It would have been actually closer to the other bid that was thrown out. Those 2 bids were pretty similar in number if you would have added them correctly.
And then, I guess, I know you said he had reached out there, but it seems like in looking at the actual RFP that we put out on this, I guess my concern is we still continue to specify manufacturers and specific model numbers rather than putting, we want specs or items to meet these specs. So if we want a 60-watt light bulb, then I guess that's where I'm struggling is why don't we just say, okay, we want a 60-watt light bulb and we want 198 of them. Not we want a GE 1222 563 part number that is 60 watt. I mean, to me, that limits the number of people or bids that we're going to get back on this. You know, and ABL, I did some looking. ABL and the Lithonia, I think, are the same company. So I think they both fall under the same company on that. So that makes sense because they're the exact same part number. But I guess that's my question. And I understand as far as, yeah, we have specs and the other stuff, but when we go through and say, well, we want ABL, or in this case, the Lithonia, which are the same company, and we want this specific part number, to me, we take that pool of people that can vote on that, or put a RFP in and compact it down significantly. So I guess that's an issue I have with this, is we continue to do this, and it's been brought up time and time again that we need to put things out as specs rather than actual manufacturers or part numbers on that. And I don't know, that's the frustrating part to me, is because here we are again, and we've done the exact same thing, that in some cases, we went and rebid things because of this.
Soak all that in. I agree with what you're saying, but I'm also being a little hesitant in the fact that I wonder, and again, Rusty would be the one to really state the mindset here, but I'm wondering if you're not specific, are you opening yourself up too much to, I mean, a part's a part, but it really isn't. You know, I mean, when you go to purchase a computer or a phone or you know, a pair of jeans, I mean, are they all the same? But they're not, you know? And I wonder if maybe that's where some of it is going. I mean, again, only Rusty's going to know.
And I know what you're saying, but I guess what I look at, I mean, I know years ago, I mean, even on the computer stuff, it was done, you know, even before I was on the board, like with, you know, when they went with Macs, it was specified certain specs, well, only Macs could meet those specs.
Yeah.
So
It was different than that. The Macs had to have 30 gig hard, or 40
Yeah.
gig,
So-
30 gig hard drives. The PCs had to have 40 gig and had to have more memory, and it was,
and
when we bid, we had a backhoe that we bought one time that we bid the exact model number. It was a used backhoe, so we put the specs out for the exact one that they had at Carico, and mysteriously, that was the only responding bid.
Right.
And that's what you run into is, you know, that if you're fearful of inferior products, then that's where you put in things about warranties and things like that. You know, one of the things I see different on these is lumens, but there is not a set standard for lumen measurements, you know, that I'm aware of. And I think it actually correlates actually between the wattage and the lumen output. But it is concerning to me as well that you're bidding brand names.
well, and in going with, in taking what Luke said, because I do agree there is some truth to some of that in a lot of products you go with, but I did some looking even on this other one, just because there was such a huge discrepancy, 42,000 versus the 20,665. You know, this, I don't know how you pronounce it, Veopto or whatever. I mean, they're obviously a fairly decent sized company. They do all the lighting for Burger King and a number of other national companies. So, I mean, their product's got to be halfway decent if they're using it on some of that stuff there as well. On top of that, which kind of plays into the reason I was asking about the specs in that, they don't offer a 4,000 lumen, or if that's what they're doing on this, the 4,000, they don't offer that specific model. So it's impossible for them to quote that exact model. So I guess, I don't know, I guess that's kind of where I'm at in this. I understand and appreciate the fact that we're going through on this, but I think, again, we limit ourselves to who can come in and bid on this stuff if we're specifying a specific brand or whatever on here, so.
Okay. I understand.
I just have a hard time supporting that if that's the direction.
What's the timeline that we need to have this approved by? Is there?
Well, as far as the work that was going to be started, it was going to be, the intent from Rusty's viewpoint was to get it ordered so then they'd be on hand and John would start working on it. Actually, that would be one of his major projects through this summer, is to have it done before school starts.
When do they need to be ordered by to still meet that goal?
Well, I'm not sure. I just know in his mind, he was hoping to get it ordered in April. That doesn't mean that it takes 2 months for them to come in, but, or a month to come in, but that was what he was hoping to get them ordered.
So, Yeah, I guess that would be one of my questions, being that there is such a big difference there. Like I said, they don't offer a 40, but they actually offer one that exceeds those specs. I think it's 4,200 lumens. And then I think that you have some different colors when it comes to the LED and the other stuff as well. I guess that would be my question then. If we're not doing it based off of a manufacturer, and we are going to do based off, because the other stuff states specifically it needs to be this particular model number. I guess that would be my question then, is if we don't do that and we go back to this, for sake of argument, this VAPTO, and say, okay, well, what could you do for us for the 4,200 lumens? I mean, and the reason I say that, I mean, $22,000 is $22,000, so that's a significant amount for lighting.
We've put these lights in other spots, haven't we, or this
Yeah.
is different lights?
Well, the high school, that was the project, the last one that was pretty much completed at this point. And I believe that they were utilizing, they've had very good success with that particular light. That may be the reasoning why they're working with that light, and that's what was put in at the high school. The ballast, the lights are interchangeable from one building to the other. I believe that's probably part of the reasoning that goes to it.
Since we have different light bulbs in all different parts of the building, tracking that and replacing that might be a little more difficult if we want to put the same one in all the places, or if they want to change around the light bulb.
There won't be bulbs.
They're LED now,
LEDs,
so they're strips.
you basically replace the guts of it if you redo it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like just replacing a bulb. The one is rated at 60,000 hours, so, I mean, that's, you're talking 15, 20 years on a fixture that you probably replace the fixture at the end of the life versus the, bulb, so. I mean, I think the argument would be that they, we're used to this one, we like it, I get that, but I think a lot of this, if it's a troffer light that's 2x4 or whatever the size, I know there's several different sizes, but if you want the color at 4,000K and you want the lumens at a certain amount or above, then that would get you to, and a warranty, and I mean, you can also set it up in a way that the company's got to be, been around for a significant amount of time, where you're not dealing with some company that sprung up overnight.
Well, and I guess I guess the reason because I did some looking between the different ones, and the LED Direct, it doesn't even say, so I wasn't even able to look anything up on that. But I mean, warranty across the board were 5 years on both of them, so I mean, that's not going to be any big deal. But I don't know, like I said, I guess if money were flush and it was no big deal, I mean, I suppose we could do that. But in a case like this where, we're still trying to watch everything and keep everything as efficient as possible, again, I go back to, the $22,000 is still $22,000. I mean, that's something we could use towards something else, so. Well, there's a motion on the table. I don't know if anybody has any other discussion or.
Do we know, will Rusty be at the next meeting?
Rusty will be back by that time, yeah. I think the one item that he might end up sharing, at least what he had shared before he had left, was just he was certainly looking at it as a difference of the one, because they are identical lights, which you just had mentioned,
Yeah.
between the 56 and the 42, and the savings that existed between them was a great deal as far as the quality and the deal that we're getting with that. I don't know if that would change that part of it, and turn around, put the specs down. That could be done. If we get a little bit late start in the summer with that, maybe John may still, I mean, the best time to change things is when there's no children in the buildings, but it doesn't, if anybody's saying it has to be done in the summertime, it doesn't have to be.
When is our next board meeting?
April 9th, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I
2
was
weeks.
gonna say, is 2 weeks gonna make it a make or break thing as far as ordering them, as far as doing that, or?
Well, no, it'd be if, you would have to put bids out again.
Well, I guess I'd just be
Is what
curious to
you'd
hear,
say,
I
so-
mean, you made the comment that Rusty had reached out to some of these other companies as well, is that correct? Or did I misunderstand that?
I know that he had reached out to the Western Extra Light and the American Electric Company.
okay.
Those two trying to figure out the difference between the 56 and the 42.
Gotcha.
I do not know if he even, if he did at all with the other two. I know he did the top two to figure out why they're so different. $14,000 difference when he knows full well they're identical lights.
Right.
That was the big question. He was trying to get an answer.
So if I'm tracking this right tonight, our options would be we could accept this one and say, okay, for next time, these are all the concerns, this is what we want the next bid process to be. We can deny this one and say, let's go out and rebid it.
Or table it.
Or table it, yeah, or table, and that's not the third option, table it until the 9th, and perhaps Rusty could give us more insight that would help us feel more comfortable. Am I accurate? Those are really our three choices? Is there anything else that you guys see that I'm missing?
I think so, I think those are basically the options.
I'd like to say that I would want consistent lighting of brands throughout the buildings, because I just see the building, that being a benefit. Because if it ends up at some point where you have to have two of the different light bulb brands in one room, the lighting would get off. I don't know if you've ever had different light bulbs at different brands in the same room or on your headlights for your car, but it throws things way off. And for these two bids, just the difference between them, I'd hate for us to go down the path of rebidding it and we lose that lower bid.
Well, and I'd like to just share with what you're saying. I agree completely with what's being said. If you have a bid for $20,000 and the $20,000 bid is a different kind of light that we've not used, but it has high quality and it's going to be just as good, it's just that we haven't used it, okay. But if it's a deficient compared to the others,
Right.
if it just doesn't, we want good lights in our buildings. Just the switching them out, just the issues of.
And I agree, the
that
lowest
part-
bid is not always the best, but I guess in this situation, and in my opinion, I mean, when it comes to LED lighting, I mean, and I think you said it, Greg, we're not gonna be replacing these things, and even if we do with the strips on the other stuff, when it comes to LED, as long as they're the same color spectrum and the other stuff,
Yeah.
you can put 5 different brands side by side, and they're all gonna put out the same color spectrum, so.
Yeah, LED is a lot different than the
Right.
incandescent that we've used in the past, or even the fluorescent.
Right.
Well, I think what you said, John, is, until you've tried the others, do you know if they're substandard or not? Now, I don't think the idea would be that you would go down this path and go buy 300 and some lights or 500 lights, whatever it is we're talking about, to make that decision, but, one of the options would be to bring one of those in and say, how does it compare? And, before you throw them all out, and it would be nice to hear from Rusty, at least his thought process.
I guess too, how many other lighting projects do we have beyond the Hayes High one that's been completed and the Roosevelt one that's pending right now?
Well, there's other lighting projects that we're holding off on because of the facilities plan. There's a building or two we'd rather not put
New lights in it?
40,000, yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, with what you said, may we just table it to the next meeting then? If that's, because I'd say that would give a little bit more direction then at that point.
We just need to amend the motion.
I'll make the motion to table it till the next meeting.
Second it.
Okay, that's been moved by Board Member Schwartz and seconded by Board Member Fox. What do we need to do on the first one? Okay, so. Okay, any further discussion on the tabling it then until the next meeting? And you said Rusty will be here at the next meeting? Okay.
We did Hayes High in sections, right? Is this one's for the whole building?
Yeah, they're trying, this is a big project, trying to get it done in the summertime.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0, so we will table it until the next meeting. Next item on the agenda is the long-range facilities planning.
And I know that the board has worked on this, even with the special board meeting. They had the 2-hour session. I didn't know in my preparation of how to share this with the board, my thoughts or, what discussion you would end up having as well. But I do know that as we talked, I've heard benefits of a variety of ways, to gather information and put together a plan. I've heard individuals, share what they end up thinking. The difficulty is coming together with the board as a whole of saying, okay, this is what our plan is. This is how we're going to move ahead with it. The part that hasn't been talked about as much is a matter of taking as many of the ideas and molding them together. And that's what I probably had gotten to in my own thoughts more than anything. The front end plan, I shouldn't say front end, because my stepping into this 2 years ago was not the front end. It was really the second bond election. But with the second bond election, with Naboltz being identified as the construction manager at risk and having also DLR identified as the architectural firm, those two firms were actually identified because of their history, their expertise, their resources that they end up having. It was not just DLR, it was definitely Naboltz as well that was very involved in number crunching, of putting together information to help in the process of the last bond election. To not consider the use of those two companies, I just don't think you want to do that. I think they need to be, you can rein them in, you can identify how you want to use them, but they're there. And they're there, and they're in a position where I think they have been very, they're in a spot of just saying, how can we help? And in that particular case, I think it's not a matter of pushing us at all. I can't believe anybody would think that since the bond election last, that there's any pushiness whatsoever that exists with those two companies. They've been very, they're waiting to say, how does the board wish to continue? And how do they want, how can we help in the process? So whether it's a committee that's identified by the board, if the board is, and I've heard the board actually identify too, I think we should be more involved. That's fine. But I think the board could be more involved of just that checks and balances of how things are being put together, and then have that piece of time within board meetings as we continue, that's shared with them, and that they're definitely in agreement as the steps that are being taken as it's being developed. For the board to be the group that's going to be meeting and developing the plan, I've said it before, I'll repeat it, that's just not your job. The responsibilities, you shoulder an awful lot the way it is, and to think that you would be involved in putting together a plan, there's the benefits that exist of having those outside individuals to be part of that committee work who actually would volunteer. There's individuals out there that would do it, that they could be in place using the resources of Naboltz and DLR, it does not have to be viewed that DLR is running the show. You know, it can be more that they are identified as that resource that's helping in the committee, and that committee is the one that's coming forward to share on a regular basis with the board as to what's being developed at this particular point. So I'm sharing that with you as far as my own thoughts in the last couple months. I hope that it doesn't seem too complicated. I think it can be put together in a way that has merit as we work through it and actually end up with a plan that might be a very solid one to try at that particular time.
I agree with what I'm hearing when you say, John, is that bringing back DLR and Naples back in to help us is good. So you've laid out something. What are you suggesting as a route forward, though? Just kind of set a route forward. Like, do we look at saying on the 9th before this meeting, we ask DLR and Naples to sit down with us at a table and talk about what they saw and what maybe we should be considering as we move forward? Because it'd be nice to get started, even if it's going to take a year or 6 months or whatever it may be to get to the point where we say, okay, we've got what we believe the public will support this time.
Well, I think that to this particular point, we've relied upon ourselves. You know, it's just the board's conversations and thoughts. And if individuals have reached out and talked to other individuals, that's fine, but it's just based on that. To end up utilizing those individuals that have been, you can't deny they're the experts. They're the ones that are dealing with this all the time. They're the ones that, when you have both those, you have NABLTS and you have both, and DLR, I have always got the feeling that they're very open to the idea of working with us. Not a matter of they've got a plan, they're going to end up doing this, and they're going to end up telling you what's the next plan that needs to be developed. If the board wishes to meet with them, I'm sure they'd be here at the next meeting. You know, I'm sure if you wanted to talk to them, they actually, I know Ron Ferris has talked to me recently and said, whenever you need them, just let him know. I've had Amber Beverlin, it was a week ago, she sent me an email again just saying, if there's anything that you need, just let us know. So I'm saying that's a possibility. The other possibility is if you end up having every intention of creating your own committee, that you wish to identify a group of individuals from the community that they to work on this, that's fine, but I'd still want to give that committee resources, and I still believe that DLR and NABLTS are resources that we should utilize.
And I'm going to agree because I've had the opportunity to visit 3 different schools that are undergoing bond issues. Whether they've got state funding or not doesn't matter as much. It's just that what they shared in talking with the administration there is that the architects and the construction management risk people bring value to their ideas. Because we're talking about, we've got the interior structures to fix, the plumbing, whatever we decide, whatever, that we already know those problems exist. But there is this other aspect of how to enhance the value of the properties we own to be more reflective of the learning environment today. And I think that's important to have that as part of what we're looking at. And if we're considering spreading out over 30 years, if that's still on the table, which we haven't decided if we're doing a 30-year look and we're going to spread it out over multiple bond issues, and those are all ideas kicked around. But they would help us be aware of what we may also need to consider in designing the buildings to be appropriate for the next 20 or 30 years. Because after seeing what is being done and how it's impacted the learning environment and student learning, we're way behind. We're still teaching boxes and boxes, and I think they bring in that exterior view that can help us out. And particularly help us out of where should we put the resources first. I know we've identified physical problems that have to be fixed, but we also need to consider the largest impact on the generations of students that will be impacting. So I would be the one to have them come in, if we were to prepare questions ahead of time, maybe come into our board meeting next time, or extend our board meeting a little bit. We haven't met to midnight in a while, so maybe it's worth doing for those that are doing it. But I'd like to hear them and take their take of some things we happen. Because we have talked about it, we've talked around it. People are reaching out saying we're ready to help. But I want a little more information about some of the expertise that we contracted with in the previous cycle.
I would agree with that request. Also, on the front that we've had several changes in the board since the last election, and I think, or since the, last bond election, so I think it would be good for these guys to engage. And I haven't had a chance to talk to DLR or NAPOLT since, and whether that's good or bad, I don't know, but I would like that opportunity. And I don't know if it's the right setting or not, but some of the vision team members from the last time, I would like their feedback or communication between them and those two groups as to what they felt lacked. Where did they have support? Where did they not have adequate support, direction, that type of thing too. And I don't want to stay till midnight.
No, I just,
For the record.
just having the pause to allow for someone else to speak. I mean, we've had two board. I'm just pausing to make sure if Luke wanted to say something.
I mean, I would agree. At some point, I've always wanted DLR and NAPOLS to come back in. I think you said it best. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I want them to lead everything. I don't really want them to sit in the back and do nothing either. You know what I mean? I appreciate them greatly, being that they are experts in the field. As you have mentioned, I think that the attitude from them has very much been, well, what can we do for you? You know, I mean, we're here to help and support you in any way. I think at this point in time, you're right in the fact that I don't know that we 100% know which direction we're going at this point. So, I mean, as far as Mandy and Paul's idea, bring them in and we'll question them and get some guidance and whatever else, I'd be fine with that. I do agree with long-term, I like some form of a committee or something else doing that. You had mentioned something tonight that I really liked. If this would be something that would happen, is maybe, you know, we talked about it last time as, you know, the vision team went and did everything, and then they come back to us and they present the idea, you know, and it's kind of hard for us to make adjustments or tweaks at that point in time because they've invested 8 months or whatever else, and also volunteer time, and you hate to say, man, we just hate that, you know, scrap this whole thing, you take another 20 million off or something. I liked the idea of, you know, we have this time slot already in here, you know, maybe once a month or once every 2 months or whatever that time period we decide, they come and just update us, you know, and that way, you know, as Greg has said, we can still be a part of that process. We can still put our 2 cents in and still tweak it a little bit. And if we horribly feel that it's going way in a direction that we don't want, we have the ability from the foundation to make a guiding change rather than at the very end saying, gosh, I wish we would have changed that a lot, but we weren't involved, you know?
Well, I wasn't trying to waffle with just the different ideas that had come up when we talked before. It was really just going that it makes sense that you just get criticized so easily if you go strong one way or another. It seems like maybe there'd be more merit in the end if you were really trying to encompass a variety of those approaches together. You want to say collaboration. The word was used at an earlier time in this meeting. I don't know how this wouldn't be any more important, you know, to have collaboration of thoughts and different people. We do have some people that think that they are part of this community and they know what this community needs. I can appreciate that, but I do think there are thoughts and ideas that come from outside of this community that can be also very valuable and helpful as you design and try to prepare for future. So I think the collaboration of many minds might have the better plan in the end.
So Paul, I guess I just had a quick question. So are you basically asking then, I mean, you're basically wanting these groups here just to be able to bounce questions off of, or basically fill us in as far as how they thought things went? And
I think it's a little bit of both. Fill us in on how things went and ask some questions. Like we've talked about different things where we said maybe we need to go smaller and spread it out. But what's the implications of that it may be? Are we losing some economy of scale? That though we think that we're going to save money, but we do know that the cost of construction goes up every year. So our dollar 30 years from now is not going to buy us what we think it will. But some of those economy of scales may be helpful, or even a little bit in prioritizing where the critical needs. I mean, we've got that. That came out of the vision team, and when it came out of the facilities work that you did before I came to the board. I mean, those problems have never gone away, but maybe there are some things that can help out. And the other is, I think that's it, is Nabholz with construction management risk may help us get a better financial sense of our commitments of spread out. DLR may give us a better vision of not just the interior fixing, but some of the things that maybe we need to be considering to assure that we're fulfilling one of our strategic goals is that, elevate the standard and the quality of education. Because the physical plant makes a difference.
Right.
And that's why we're redoing nursing at the university, because we're not preparing.
the only reason I was asking, I guess that's why I wanted to double check, is part of me thought maybe we're putting the cart before the horse by bringing them in here. I mean, if we're just looking more for question and answer type settings and try to get their opinion, but.
Yeah, and I think it's partly to help us try to sort out intense 15-year, 10-year. And we got the, from Piper Jaffray, we did get that, how much we could afford if we were to do a shorter term. And that's still information. At the end, it will be up to us to decide.
Sure.
And I like the idea of involving community. I guess the one thing would be nice to have people there at the beginning of the meeting who'd be willing to speak out what they see or problems with it. And those parts where you ask where the audience is. But we know we're getting them individually, but it'd be good to have it here for a public record. So that we can engage more of the community, because I think it comes down to it. As I was reviewing the minutes, even some of our, in February when you met on the business needs or the industrial needs in Hayes, and how do we play a part with that? Because I'm not sure we engaged that community enough until too late in the process. When we did ask for people like some of the other corporations say, is this worth our time to do? And I think that would be good to try to get some of those folks engaged. But I would like to talk, because afterwards I felt like, oh, we're so defeated. But wait, and I haven't really heard of DLR and Nabholz, nor have we actually asked them to come back and visit with us.
Well, and I would say that, I don't know if it's fair to say typical, but I don't think it's uncommon that after a bond election does not pass, that at some point you end up having those that were involved most intimately share their thoughts. As Mandy said, those people that were part of the vision team, for them to share their ideas openly with the board for again, DLR and Nabholz to share their ideas is not, I don't think it would be putting a cart before the horse. In some ways, it'd be more still of gathering information from the last bond election that did not pass.
Possible extended an invitation to those people involved in it, say, come to the board meeting, and if they have particular pieces, it could be a little bit more of an suspend parliamentary procedure for a bit and have a little bit of an open forum, which we could vote to do if we chose to.
Well, the other thing that's admirable is the board's taking this on their shoulders very much from that point of having these conversations, of having the special board meeting, when you could very well, a board could just as well have turned around from the last bond election that did not pass and just gave the assignment right back to DLR and Nabholz and say, okay, we need to do this again, and get another one running. And there again, it's not on your responsibility then, you just kind of passed it on to them. And I'm just saying that isn't out of ordinary. I would say that some of those other places that they've been involved with, other school districts, that's really what happened after a bond election didn't pass. They just were reassigned and okay, work from here, use the information and try to put together another plan that may have a better chance of passing in this community. If the board, if anybody else to share, but if you're okay with that, I would arrange whether the next meeting or the meeting after to have some individuals to be present, not to tell you what to do. Okay, that's not what I would bring them in. I would bring them in to review and share their thoughts as to the last bond election, because that hasn't happened yet. There's not been any review from Ron Ferris, Amber Beverlin, or even any of the vision, excuse me. Well, I shouldn't say that, because Mike, you were on it, but for most vision team members, haven't had any input from them.
I would like to see us look at an operational cost analysis on these ideas, because I think one of the problems I see is you had the Facility Needs Committee, and they had one recommendation that had whatever it had. You had Vision Team, which is a completely different recommendation. I mean, the repairing the deferred maintenance things were on everything, but we started talking about 1 building, 2 buildings, 3, 4, whatever the number is for elementary, and we are 7 opinions up here, and if we bring a committee of 20 in, we'll have 20 opinions, and DLR will have another, the construction manager will have another, and they all become opinions. I think DLR and the construction manager become vital roles to this as we narrow what our focus would be. But to get to ours, I think you've got to look at a couple of things, and it's not all about the finances, but a big chunk of it is or could be. I mean, what is the cost to operate 1 school versus 2 versus 3 versus 4? What are the costs on an operational level? What are the savings from, utilities, maintenance, those things from, shutting down another school? What are the costs? That's where DLR, I think, and the others would come in. What's the cost for a new building or the additional construction? And then I think as we refine that and you get it down to, maybe it's we come up with the 2 or 3 options that we have, and then we bring in a committee and have them, we bounce the ideas off of them, get their feedback on it, and then use that. But I think polling's the other thing. I think you can talk about the vision team, you can talk about everybody else, and everybody's got an opinion as to why it failed. But how many of those are based on any data that we can rely upon? I mean, polling is really probably the only reliable data you could have.
Yeah, and we've not done that.
No, but everybody can come in and say what they think, and you're either going to believe them or you're not if you agree with it. But to me, if you had some numbers that would show that this is why we think 1 building's better than 2, or 2 is better than 4, or whatever it is, and then you start doing the analysis from there. Is okay, if you get to a number of buildings, then the next step is, where are they going to be? Are they going to be new? Are they going to be repurposed? Are they going to be remodeled? Then you can start looking at those, and that's where DLR and the construction management can help us as well on, is it more efficient to build a new one or to repurpose this building for something else?
I still think bringing them in within the next couple of weeks would help that process, because I think they could answer some of those questions. Because they did look at some of that analysis, but I'd like to have them in partly because we really haven't talked with them, and I'd kind of like to get there. I'd like to do it as part of the fact finding. Bring them back later, since we're have that extended contract, as we say, okay, now give us a little more, give us detail about what it's gonna cost. But I'd like to have them in earlier than later in the process.
I'm not opposed to people asking him questions, but I'm not certain what questions you would ask them tonight or 2
Well,
weeks.
But in 2 meetings, I could probably.
Well, but what would they give us that would help make those decisions? That's why, it's other than their opinions.
Well, I think they maybe can give us some things about what they may have seen in the election process, about what people said. They did do some initial analysis looking at different sizes of buildings. It'd be nice to say, okay, so what have you seen? What are some of the pros and cons of looking at those? I think they can answer some of those. I'm also interested in the economy scale about, if we do build one or two, what's going to happen? I think some of those questions could come out at that point. I'd like to get that information before I begin to decide.
But aren't those numbers, to me, I think those numbers are in-house. We have them already. We just have to put them together. At least, in the past, we've looked at those.
We have those, but then I still would like to bring in the people who put some of those numbers together, which are DLR and Apples. They put the price tag on what those items are.
Like when we made the decision to close Washington, those numbers were internal. We didn't have to go outside.
Right.
We didn't have a committee. We made the decision to close the middle school the same way, the same decision on Munger. Those were all decisions that the finances made part of that. Now, that's not the only thing. Because the finances may say that the best option is one, but there might be some other reasons that you wouldn't want to do that.
And that's where I think DLR has some value to have them come in, because one of the things that they presented that I found to be interesting is that this is their working space, is working with schools, and getting a sense about things related to classroom sizes. They have some of the more current trends or research about what is going on and what is working well with education spaces. And I think that's important, because they may say, if you're going to really get rid of something, you might want to remodel that building, because it's going to be too hard. And I think because they've had a look at it, and Apple's had a look at it, they've looked at the buildings from a construction point and from a design point. But I just want to ask them those questions. Again, they're not going to tell us that we're going to take it down to 2 buildings or 3 buildings, or we're going to build a new super elementary. But they could say, here's some of the pros and cons that we've seen about what's going to happen as you begin to make those choices. And I'd like that sort of information, as well as some of what they may have seen in the election process.
I don't know if they gave that to the board last. I know HTK, that was one of the things we obtained, or we got from them on, which buildings were feasible to add on to and not.
It really came out of the visioning team is where some of that more came from, and I don't know enough about that process, to be honest. I wasn't engaged in it.
And I'm not trying to say we go back to HTK. I'm just saying that information's out there too. We have it somewhere. I
Well,
probably
that
have
could
it.
scale over too. But it's not going to hurt us to bring them in on the 9th to the 30th. Why do we have such a big graph in there?
Should we do a special board meeting? I feel like it could be long if we're talking for that.
Or we set a time limit?
I'd say.
But the problem I think that we have tonight, the last meeting, is if you don't have an agenda and we're just talking for the sake of talking, we'll fill as long as people want to go. We can go to midnight, and we could leave that as we have, but we probably will tonight in the last meeting, and still have no clear picture of where we're headed.
But I don't think in this meeting with them that I think we could put together, compile the questions we wanted to ask for the presentation. But that's on us to put those out ahead of time. So that would keep focus. But
What is the purpose of the presentation?
To
What do we
me-
hope to
to me,
garner
the-
from that to where we can take a next step, say we're one step closer to getting to?
And to me, the purpose is what I've outlined here is, one, it's going to make me a little more aware of where things may not have done well in the election. That's one of the questions I want to ask about. The other is to get a sense of their sense of where buildings are and aren't. Because you're right, we use internal numbers, but they've looked at it. And I'd like them to give me a sense of, okay, which ones should we be looking at, which ones are good, which ones would we be better. Now, they did do some of that in the last election, but not everybody was on the board at that time. because they did say, here's the price break of 75% to replacement cost or repair cost. There were some of those factors there. But going through that with us again to look at it, and maybe some suggestions on, okay, so what buildings might we supersize, so if that's what we want to do, or we better just to scrap. And what we're looking for is advice. It's not a decision. They're not telling us. But I think that gives us the information we could use to have the next step, which would be to say, all right, this is how many we want to do, and this is going to be the time frame that we're going to have to do it at.
Well, if you're still trying to gather information, the operational cost analysis information can be put together, I think, in the next couple of weeks, okay? So that can be done. If you're trying to gather information again from those other entities that were very involved in the last bond election, you could, I mean, whatever questions you want to ask is fine. I was just saying from the standpoint of getting their feedback as far as how the bond election and their view on that. I wasn't really even going from the standpoint of pushing ahead of saying, what do we need to do now? That wasn't the questions I was going to, it was more still of gathering information. Gathering information at this particular point is so much of what the, how would I say, the first go around I understand was, some people would say it was 4 years and some would say it was 8 years, because HTK was hired for an 8-year period there, but the last 4 is when they were really had put together a plan and had a needs assessment that was tied into it in those 4 years. For the DLR and Nabholz, that was put together, and that happened, what was it, a year? A year's time. So I'm just saying we have, well, I'm repeating what Greg said as well, is the information's still there from HTK. The information's there from DLR and Nabholz. We have a lot of we have polling information, but would some more polling information from even the last bond election have some benefit? Probably. Is it worth the money and effort to reach out and get that? Again, maybe. It depends upon who you ask, you know, who actually, no one wants to spend some more money, but maybe that would be very helpful in getting people's thoughts as far as how the last bond election went. We're still trying to gather information to then move ahead. Haven't had any board members say from the November till now, we don't need to do anything. You know, that's not what's being stated. What's being stated is we need to do, we just want to have the best plan possible moving ahead at this point. And that's what we're stumbling on is, okay, what is that best plan? What can we do at this particular point to have the greatest possibility for, and when I say success, success is just a matter of saying improving our facilities. You know, it's not a matter of saying success of getting just what we want. I think it's a matter of getting what will help this school district and this community for the future, and something that the community feel that they can support, you know, that they would back. I mean, actually, I'd be delighted if someone could lay down a plan in front of us right now and say, this is it. This is the plan that actually would be the one that really can end up working. And maybe it would be, but I think we all understand in any kind of, it's a process. The process is probably in getting to something more important than the end result. And to end up having the right process, and if anybody's frustrated with this at this point, and Greg, you're right, not having an agenda to say, well, what do we have to work from? I understand that, but it was purposeful on my part not to have anything, because I think there is purpose. There is some benefit of having the open discussions of saying, which direction do we want to go with this? If there was an agenda of identifying the different pieces, once again, it looks orchestrated. You know, someone's just planning it and someone's just telling you exactly, and definitely we don't have that with this board. We have very open-minded individuals who end up having, trying to gather as much information as possible to move ahead with this. So I'm open to which direction we go with it. What I've heard so far is, I don't think we'd get polling in place, but I can do a little bit of homework before the next meeting as far as what it would take to maybe do some more polling. I can also work on getting operational cost analysis. I could arrange that in April we have some visitors to a board meeting and share what their thoughts of the last bond election was. All those things could be done for the April meetings, if you wish for that to happen. And it's definitely going to look like it's more of an agenda, because it'll be information that we're following up and have people here, and we'd be making some steps instead of just some open dialogue with people throwing out thoughts at that point.
Well, I guess I'll throw it out there, Mr. President. I would like to have at least DLR, Apple's possibly, attend one of our meetings in April for just an open discussion. If we prepare questions ahead, great, but I feel like I do feel a void that we never did follow up with them, and I'd like to get that done and have some conversation. So I'm throwing out there as an agenda request to you.
I don't have any problem, like I said, whatever direction everybody wants to go, so. If that's the case, then yeah, I guess we'll look and see whichever meeting is probably, or it was the night, whichever one probably has the lightest agenda, and then also I would say we still set time frames on it.
I do agree special board meetings are possible, but you already have 2 a month. I hate to have another one if it doesn't have to happen. That's,
We're getting kind of close in the end of the year.
yeah.
There's no spare time. But it can be capped. I mean, set a discussion.
Right.
Just
Any other questions or comments, concerns on that?
Can I share a little frustration that I do have? I think the collaboration is good, bringing DLR is all good. But even from like the beginning of our discussions, we say that the topic is long-range facility plans, and I see how bonds fit into that. But I just feel like, or I think the conversation gets very mushed, maybe a better word. That I don't know if we're talking about an actual one single bond, or if we are talking about a long-range plan in this. And then back to the volunteer committee, that's where I get lost even from the beginning. Is this volunteer committee, are they wanting to do a bond, or are they volunteering to help with the long-range facility plan?
Good question.
Because I get lost from the beginning there, because my mind says that we need to have a long-range plan of what we see with all the buildings in the district before we really go 100% on one little bond. And I like options, so if there's different facility plans, options put in front of us that could grow into different bond ideas. But I know for me to move forward, I would have to see a long-range facilities plan in the conversation, not be so open, but actually have it laid out so we do stay on topic of a long-range facilities plan. So, thank you for letting me vent.
Well, I will say this, from the vision team, and I think the work that DLR did was already before. I think our idea was that it was a 30-year plan, that we were planning for at least 30 years in the future, and we were trying to do it all at once, which was maybe a mistake.
It was a bond that would have got done in like a few years, but it would cost us a full 30 years. I
But it
think
would
there
have
was still
prepared
that
us.
left with the community. It was like, what's gonna happen after that 30 years? Are you gonna spend all that money to fix all the problems they had and there's still not a plan after that? I felt like, for me, that was missing.
Maybe, but my point was, it was a 30-year plan. We were replacing schools, adding on to schools. That would have taken us 30 years in the future. And then, yes, in 30 years, we have to come up with another plan, I guess. But I'm not sure we can plan more than 30 years or 40 in the future anyway, can we?
I mean, you might have to.
So I don't know if we didn't, I understand that, I agree with you. We should come up with a plan overall. I think DLR could probably help us put that plan together. I think DLR could give us some advice so we could put a plan together. That is for 30 or 40 years.
Yeah, I think DLR could.
But I really think the vision team thought we were making it 3 years.
I think part of it missing, though, is with the long-range facilities plan, you're also thinking about what the district can spend and do without a bond. So you're thinking about what you're going to be doing out of those funds. It's not just bond after bond after bond long-range facilities plan. It's more encompassing than that.
And those were things we've talked about in years past.
What do you do if you have no bond?
Right.
Right,
If, or, you know,
exactly.
I agree with you
Theoretically,
100%.
you could have 5 more of these and fail every time.
Much like replacing lights, the HVAC, those are things that are gonna have to happen. If that bond happened, it'd be great, and that's why we delayed on some of the.
And that was my only question for asking if we were putting the cart before the horse, just because I don't feel like we've nailed that. We've talked a lot about the long-term planning and that, but we really haven't nailed anything down as far as that direction yet.
But we talk about DLR for that, and I know that the vision team did it, but to me, if we're going to hire somebody, maybe not, but, you know, the city they had a group when they did their long-range planning, that's all they did, and they set up committees and that's all that committee did. They set up what the city wanted to do over the next however many years it was. And, you know, when you have an architect do that, I think you have problems from the naysayer side that they're gonna say, well, they're just doing this to line their own pockets. And they might be. I mean, they will financially profit from it. And so if you have somebody that's completely detached from that, either we have to come up with a plan, or somebody else needs to, but I think if you turn that over to architects or people that are going to profit off the plan, you're always going to have that doubt.
And I would agree. One thing that the decision was made by the board a year ago, was hiring an architectural firm that was not getting paid unless the bond passed. You know, you end up having, now I know it's figured into that, but that percent is stuck there, whether it's going to be a $100 million project or a $20 million project, and the percent truly is a big difference. So I agree completely with you, but in this particular case, a year ago when the board made that decision, the board had talked about, there was some of the presentations that had a set amount that you're going to pay no matter whether it passes or doesn't pass. And then there was a couple of them that had it arranged that it'd have to pass, and then there's a percent that's tied into that ends up, so yes, but at the same time, the benefit goes to trying to get anything to pass, you know, trying to get something to work with that would...
But other than the capital needs, or I mean the deferred maintenance stuff, the rest of these things become very subjective as to why we're doing those. That's where I was asking about the financial basis of doing it, because if not, it just becomes, well, we want something new, or could be. And, you know, is there, you know, if we're talking about, as Paul brought up, you know, that a different type or size of classroom is going to have a measurable change. You know, I don't want somebody to say, well, of course, new is going to make you a better student, because it's the same thing we've had with the technology. I want something that you're going to tell me that if we do this, we're going to be able to show to the voters that we have 2% higher test scores. Sure. Or, you know, a higher graduation rate, or smaller class size, something, instead of just saying, well, it's new, it's got to be better.
Well, and it's not just that. It's when you say operational cost analysis, my mind was going more than just that. It was also identifying what is the money that you can expect to probably be putting into this building in the next 10 years so you can keep on using it.
Or save if you don't use it.
Good.
And
Right.
both energy costs, you know,
Yeah.
and that goes into the measurables of, do we build a new building or do you repurpose an old one, you know, with insulation and those things.
And how much is involved in that yeah.
But those things, I think, most of those numbers are in-house. Some of that, the insulation costs, the energy costs, DLR should be able to help us with, and that should be a pretty easy calculation for them.
And actually,
They
we
should
need to
have it
get,
already.
I want everybody to understand, the number pieces is usually not DLR. The numbers are usually Navels. Navels is usually the one that's helping us with the numbers.
Then whoever,
Yeah.
somebody that can come up with those numbers, but the other part of it though too is the internal savings. You know, if it costs us 10% less to operate that building, that's more money you can put into education, whether it be paying your staff, hiring more staff.
And Greg,
whatever
I know you are right on target, but it's been said, and I'll repeat it, one elementary is financially the best way to go. But we've already we've already talked on that as how will that be received in this community, you know, in doing that. There's no doubt, there's no question involved as to the efficiency of one building versus 4 elementaries.
And I don't mean to go back in history too much, but we had a meeting in this room years ago about talking about closing Munger, Washington, maybe the middle school. And it was the fullest this room's ever been. And you know, the people from Munger came in and preached to us about how you can't close that school. My kids are in a class of 6 and how great that is and everything else, all the while the kids at Lincoln were at 26. And there was nothing that they would do it was the greatest school ever and everything was perfect out there. And then the next year, the principal quit and everybody else pulled their kids out of there and it wasn't the school. It was, you know, and anytime you can go to 6 kids in a classroom, you know, and so under that theory, if we could do that, you know, how big or how many buildings do you build then? Because I agree that one may and probably will not be palatable for most people, but there's savings to be had, I assume, in a 2 or 3 school versus 4. Maybe not, but those are the numbers to look at, I think. And I assume they would be there, but just at a much smaller level.
Right.
And there may not, maybe maybe the difference between one to the next is so minuscule that you're not looking at from a financial aspect, but you're looking at from, you know, a lot of other aspects that such, you know, things that Shanna brought up at the last time we met.
Right.
But I still agree with Sophia that unless you have the plan that to get to the next level is nearly, I mean, you can do it, but then we start talking about all these different areas and do you get a 5-year, 10-year, you know, how much a month, and, you know, does that even matter if you're really talking about what your needs are? And the people, I think, that have the best idea of the needs are the administration and the staff. I mean, I would hope that Marty Straub has the best idea what the needs are at the high school.
Yeah.
Marty, is that true?
Depends who you ask.
But you know, I mean, and we did that with the facility needs. The staff was instrumental in that. I assume Vision Team did that as well, but they all put together what they needed, or they thought they needed or wanted, and then they refined it to needs. And
It still didn't get voted in favor of.
no, it didn't. But
I'm just saying it, but
neither one of them did.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the
And a
problem.
third, maybe we have a better shot than 3. 3 is kind of a number, but anyway, I'm going to call the question. Call the question.
Very good. Yeah, we'll actually move on to the next item. Next item is the board goals update. I think John has an update for us.
Yeah,
on
every
that.
several months, try to update for the goals. I'm going to start in December of 17. Yeah. I think that's maybe the last time, or close to it, that I talked. I just want to go over that we do try to tend to this. We do follow it month to month, trying to identify that we're looking at the goals that were set. Looking at growing the sports program was one of the objectives that was listed, and some of the hires makes a difference there. Lowering the number of students in a classroom by hiring a third kindergarten teacher at Lincoln Elementary. That was in December. Also, a better link between the socio-emotional development and academic development, and that was when Kyle Carlin hosted a CHAMPS training for district support staff. You can go into January and identify across the board a number of the different items with goals that we, recruiting, trying to retain teachers. We ended up having continuous tech cycle for replacement that was being tried to develop. We ended up having, we were talking then about trying to engage community members and link to legislators, and that was really when Eber Feltz discussed the financing. He stepped in and talked a little bit on that. As far as counselor, provided some more counseling time, in the elementaries. A little later in January, had started again looking at the long-range facility planning, talking about the bond election. Trying to update the website, keeping it current. We ended up having, and I know arranging for collaborative meetings, I don't know if that's necessarily a collaborative meeting, but that arrangement of Jacob Wood being here and talking about the construction project, just that relationship that exists there. We end up going to, let's see, February. I'll jump to February. Some of those was grant activity. We seem to be doing pretty well at getting some grants written, and I think we'll have some more information even the next board meeting about some grants that were written, which is good news. Updating lighting, that's identified. Community member links with the legislators. Part of that is a matter of attending the manufacturing meeting, which was even mentioned earlier in this meeting, but also then going to my participation in the district homeless meeting that they had within the community. We end up going to a little bit more, repeating some of these, but in March we end up having Marie Henderson offering tech tidbit trainings to all the schools. That's something new. That's integrating the digital learning plan. Again, more on the bond issue. I know I'm just hitting and missing as I go through this, but I want to make sure that, well, one of them is the safer entrances to the buildings. The work that was done over the spring break. That's identified. I know for some, you may look at it every 3 months, so we're listening to some more of this. But I'd like for you to, goal A, B, C, D, and E that we have identified a couple years ago. I know that it'll be changed this summer because we have enough different board members, and as well, we end up having some real changes and expectations with the work at the our district improvement process, for accreditation. That has to be considered in our strategic planning that we'll be doing this summer. So some of that will change, but just so you're aware that that is our focus. We are looking at that. We do try to make sure that what it was identified as a board, that we're trying to look at it and make sure that we're doing that as, I guess I'd say, as a homework assignment on a regular basis of how do we tie into that we're following what was identified a couple years ago. Any questions about it as far as, some are easier to identify. There's a few that's kind of hard to hit at times, but
Well, thanks for putting together the summary. I was looking through it, I was going, oh, I didn't remember that. Oh, yeah, that did happen, okay, so.
yeah.
But that was useful to capture the actions and your efforts and your staff's efforts to move us along what we identified through that strategic planning process a couple of years ago.
Well, it's I say embarrassing. It is embarrassing when you have a strategic plan and 3 years down the road, then you're saying, what have we done? Have we done anything in this particular area? That's just embarrassing. If you have a plan or goals that you really have not put attention to it, that really takes completely away from it. Okay.
Very good. Any other questions for John on the board goals update? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the Memorandum of Understanding for Jobs for America's Graduates, the JAG-K program.
Yeah, the MOU was really based upon what would be shared. We would agree with and go into a relationship with them of, again, financially it was $6,500 a year. It's a one-year arrangement every time. It's nothing longer than 1 year. It would take a classroom space at the high school for this to happen as well. So we're committing some space, and we're committing $6,500. And I do expect that we would be having some presentation or two within the year to identify how well we think it's going, so that you're updated on that part of it, and whether or not it's something that we should go into for a second year. But at this point, that's
I'd like, so is this forward as a motion?
it is.
Yeah,
It'd be
so I'd
for you.
entertain a motion, and then we can open it up for discussion.
I'll move that we accept the memorandum of understanding, approve the memorandum of understanding as presented.
Okay. Been moved by Board Member Adams,
Second.
seconded by Board Member Young. Any further, or actually, we'll open it up for discussion now.
I'd actually like to ask Marty a question.
I would too.
Okay.
And I can't ever see him when he sits right there.
Sit there for a reason.
So Marty,
I don't know if he's making faces, I don't know what he's doing back there.
so you've had a chance to look at this, and the 45 number, and there's also the office space and the space for a classroom. I guess one is 45 a realistic number? Is that, do you see the demand that we would meet that 45?
I think eventually we'll get to that. You know, I shared with John when this all started up, and I've been here long enough that really, man, even when you were in school, I think not quite, it was longer than that. But I remember we had a program, it was called PASS. I couldn't think of the name when it was PASS, and Val Carl led that program, and it really was designed about this same idea, finding at-risk characteristics in our student population, try to keep them in school. And Val Carl just did an exceptional job, and that was at a time we had about 942 kids was our September 20 count. We went up to 1,160 a few years later. And we saw the number of at-risk kids increasing, which percentage-wise, perhaps your dropout rate wasn't going to increase, but it is more difficult to stay up and provide the services. So when this was John brought it to our attention. We've talked to a lot of our professional colleagues in Emporia and Salina and Junction City, perhaps Great Bend, perhaps some other schools I can't think of right now, and I just feel like it's a win-win. I know it costs the district $6,000, and every place has told us time and time again, finding the right person to match your needs, to match your kids. I really believe that we'll have some people that are very interested in doing just this. As far as 45, we had a good conference call. I'm sorry, I can't think. I want to say Beth, but the representative that came and spoke to you at the last board meeting. We had a really good conversation with her, and she was really, you know, when you start, you may not start with 45. You may start with 25 and work to 30 and 35, but there are ways to put that person out amongst the kids in different assignments that will allow them to help us identify those kids that are at most risk. And Tom and I were talking about different ideas just today in our organizational meeting, just to say, we may start with 25 or 30, but there are absolutely ways where we get this person, he or she, interacting with our kids to help identify those kids that would be most benefiting their help. So I would ask you, let us try it. I can't imagine, when John told us the dollar amount and she reaffirmed it, it was like, man, I can't. It's just, it sounds too good to be true, but we've been able to talk to people in schools that you probably would say are probably tougher than Hayes High, that are saying it's doing good things for their kids. It's doing good things for their community. So I just don't know what we have to lose. I really appreciate the opportunity to think about it, and I'm glad that they approached us, said, you know, Western Kansas has needs too. I talk about disparities a lot between schools in this state, whether it's Blue Valley or Shawnee Mission or whatever, but this is one of them. They've been accessing these types of services for a little bit of nothing for 5 years. I think our kids deserve some more help, and it would be certainly help us keep more of our kids in school. I met with the Stuco leadership team today about some graduation preparation and things, and we always recognize perhaps that a student maybe passed away by leaving an empty chair, and there's none in this class, which is always good news. But they said, the kids looked at one another and said, but you know, Mr. Straub, we were talking about the number of dropouts we have in our class. You know, I thought it was very interesting. These high flyer kids were saying, we remember a lot of our friends aren't here. They're alive, but they're not in school. They gave up, or they had situations that they couldn't overcome, or we just couldn't give them as much individual attention. So now I'm blabbering, but I just feel like I can't imagine what we have to lose. Why not give us a try, and we'd be very happy to bring him or her and us back in and give you feedback, and you give us feedback as to what you hear, and we can find space for the person. What people don't realize is that, remember, even though we increase population again next year, we increased by 20% the teaching load for our teachers a few years back. They taught 5, now they teach 6, so we increased the capacity by 20% in our population that we can handle too. So, Manny, when you guys were with us, we had 17 teachers that were moving around on carts, but we're a long ways from that.
That's what I was just going to ask. So space, and that's no issue then?
For the next 3 or 4 years, no. Yeah, and you know, the class sizes that they require are really quite small, you know, 10 to 12, 10 to 15 in each one of those sections. We'll use that person more, but as far as the class and the curriculum that they teach is really rather small. We have some mid-sized classroom areas that we think we can use.
Very good. Any other questions or further discussion on that?
I do like this, but it also says about having a committee to get together to select those 35 and get that on the class schedule all before August. I would just hate to vote yes and approve this just for you guys all to be stretched thin, because I feel like they came to us very last minute with this, like giving us very little prep time.
Sophia, I don't think that the counselors or the staff at the high school will have a difficult time identifying 30, 35 in the time frame that we have. I think they probably, if they sat down tomorrow for just a matter of 30 minutes to an hour, could probably identify the majority of them just in that amount of time.
Yeah, when you look at spending your time, it's cost benefit. I think the costs the benefits far outweigh the costs that it would take us to set aside time to identify those kids and start working with the parents and the kids and educating them. It is going to take some time, absolutely so. But I think it's something we can do and are interested in doing.
And do you think there's some kids that you already have that a program like this might keep them for another year? I mean, ones that you're on the bubble to drop out if you don't do something for them?
I think identifying of we talked a lot about this over the last couple of years, the identification of kids that are most at risk for dropout. We don't have to, we can really go further back in their schooling than high school, but certainly some schools approach it differently. Some schools will start with juniors and seniors and really just try to keep them. But if you don't get involved with their sophomore year, at least when they turn 16 and the parents give up the fight because they've been fighting since third grade, you've lost a good number of your dropouts. The biggest dropout year normally is when that kid turns 16 and the parent has just really, really worked hard to try to keep them in school, and they finally can legally sign them out and not fight with them every morning. And if we can start with freshmen, actually, because there's certain things that we can look to as far as behaviors, even in elementary and in middle school, that we can maybe identify and help those kids start having a more positive. Relationships is so very key, and that's why every school we talk to says it's so very key to get the right person. Get that person that really is vested in this kid.
Right. Okay.
Sophie, I think we can do it. I think we're willing to do it. If I buy some pizza and some pop, maybe it'll be some evenings, but I think we'll find a way to do it. Pepsi. We're a Pepsi school.
Very good. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next item on the agenda is discussion by board members and agenda requests.
John, I just had a question. We talked a while back about the capital outlay presentations, and looking at that, we're now 3 months from the end of the fiscal year. Are those coming up?
We can arrange this in April.
Any other discussion or board agenda requests?
And John, maybe it's possible that the legislature's beginning to wind down, but if there are some things that'll come out of this legislative session that will affect us at the policy level, might be like school safety being one of those.
Maybe. How about, Julie was here, and she mentioned the committee she's on, or heading committee. Would it be beneficial to have her or some of the people come to a meeting one of these days and talk about security and some of the things that are being done in that area? It might be helpful considering some of the stuff that happened a few weeks ago.
And Mike, that's being planned, but that would be probably this summer, because she's going to present even in early June or late May, and
Oh,
so
okay.
to the administrators.
January 1.
But it would be good. How about to the board too?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I said, the board would then get.
I got your question. I take away my request, my possible request or whatever. Listen, she just want to touch your request.
Very good. Any other discussion? Okay, then I think we do need an exec session. I will move that the Board of Education recess into executive session to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel, KSA 754319B1, specifically the superintendent's evaluation, with open session to resume in this room at, I would say let's do 15 minutes. I think we have, everybody has them. And those are all turned in, correct, sir?
What's that?
We have all of them? Okay.
Yes. One's paper form, but yes, you have them all.
So let's say with the open session to begin at 9:05 and to include the Board of Education. So I guess I have that on there. Second.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. All right.